Hello, and good day, everyone. Welcome to Drakan Gates Glitch Tutorial, episode 80, where we are going to be talking about the glitches that we can do in Jasaad's palace, as well as the exterior of the Flesh Mage's palace. We might be able to talk about a bit about the Bridal Hall, in regards to actually talk about the Bridal Hall, aside from its connections to Grotos's lair, but more in depth of the Bridal Hall is going to be talked about in next episode. But for right now, I'm not entirely sure if Jasaad's palace and the Flesh Mage's palace will take on the entire episode, but there's not too much to really talk about between the two, so I think I might be able to talk a bit about the Bridal Hall, but enough putting on airs. Let's begin this episode. So let's talk about Rynn getting into Jasaad's palace early. So what we're going to do here is use a level 8 Impale and Time Slow, in which case we'll do the Phantom Rolling glitch, and we can go through the force field at the entrance as if it was just another wall. But do be mindful with how deep she goes into the ground, because since there's no outer limit, Rynn will fall to her death unless you're able to roll out of it before she gets down too far. Woohoo! Aside from using Impale and Time Slow, if we don't have that option, if we go out behind Jasaad's palace, there is a location out here in which we can perform some sideways tunnel flips, and then we can utilize a method that we've did in episode 65, in which case we can have Rynn jump repeatedly going forward, and as she's jumping forward, she is slowly getting inside Jasaad's palace, and you keep doing this until she pops through. Once when we have Rynn inside, what we want to be able to do is roll Rynn right up this slope here. However, it's slippery. What we got to do to be able to do it is just simply have Rynn jump onto the slope. And the thing about this spot is that this slope doesn't allow her to slide back down to a flat surface. Instead, it keeps her right on the slope, thus allowing us to roll up. I believe now that the same thing happened back in episode 75 part 1, just after the 19-minute mark, where we were able to roll across a slippery slope. So as long as Rynn is unable to slide down to a flat surface and that she comes to a stop, you can roll across slippery slopes. But more testing needs to be done in order to confirm that this is indeed a messed up law of physics that applies to the world of Drakan the Ancient Gates. All that being said, if we want Rynn to get inside Jasaad's palace, all we gotta do is just have some persistence, as with a lot of glitches, because this one's a little bit random, given that you almost have to do a frame-perfect roll to have Rynn pop inside. But we're in a perfect position that randomness doesn't really matter, because we can just go back down, go back up, go back down, go back up, until we finally are able to get Rynn inside. Also, when we're in Jasaad's palace with the Phantom Rolling glitch activated, we can go inside the Pain Golem, given that he is considered an object at this point. Now let me share with you a method how to get out of here, though the method I'm about to show you guys is obsoleted by the Who Teleport, given that this is a decorative platform. We can just teleport to the bottom below here. But this method was something that I discovered on my own several years ago, and by darn I'm still going to show it to you guys. As just now, it's just another nuance of fun thing to do. So basically, what we want to do is have Rynn perform sideways tunnel flips or sideways flips to try to get Rynn caught at the base of the pillar here, like that. And then we're able to enter in below the palace. And we can exit out either going to the left or to the right. There is no collision programming to the walls directly that way. But let's skip that for now. Let's talk about trying to explore this place. When exploring underneath Jasaad's palace, there's two invisible walls which will become important a little bit later in the video, but as for right now, we just want to show you guys visible walls located closer to where the Pain Golem and the gate is, and then one that's just a little further back below Jasaad's throne room, I guess? But one thing, though, underneath here, we cannot use Impale or other offensive magic. This is similar to episode 76, part 1, in which we basically create a cacophony of sounds that I guess can be a little grating on the ears. But if we want to actually bypass with Rynn the invisible barrier that's over to our left, we're going to need to exit out of here, use time slow, and then while outside use impale, and then come back in here, go through the barrier, and then discuss a few other things before moving on. I'm not sure if I shared this fact with you before, but this is a helpful hint when trying to find a dash climb place, is if you can jump at the slope and she slides down, that means you can dash climb it. If she doesn't slide down, instead gravitates back towards where you were, it is too steep for you to do a dash climb. So what we're going to do here is essentially dash climb up, and we're going to actually have Rynn pop into the palace. And once we pop into the palace, well, where they're going to jump where the Pain Golem is, and we're going to do a Who teleport to teleport down into this little alcove area. Now, this hidden area inside Jasaad's palace is really small and not really much there is to explore. However, let me share with you guys how to get out of here when you're done exploring here. So you can either exit out over there or exit out over here. What we're going to do is basically have Rynn just do a side flip or a back flip to get out of there. It might take a little bit more than that to actually get out of there, but I just got lucky with that little first try. The other way we can get out of here is go here, and the thing is, we can't use the Who teleport because we learned that it doesn't really like us being this close and having a steep slope right below us. But that's when we can use a dash variant to ignore that little fact and be able to teleport down to the world platform, even though it's a slippery slope, because we are close enough to it. Now, to get out of here from this location, aside from going up to the palace, we are going to actually go out over here. Now here, the walls are tangible, but we can just go ahead and bypass this invisible barrier by using our double jump technique, just like how we were able to get through doors with doing the double jump. And now we're back outside and we go say hi to Arokh. Speaking of Arokh, we are going to talk about how we can actually get Arokh inside the palace, which Arokh looks pretty eager looking down at the palace there. But before that, sorry Arokh, we are going to actually talk about a few other things unrelated to the palace to get out of the way, and then we will discuss how we can get Arokh inside the palace. Well, aside from getting Rynn high enough to be able to access the steeple here, which is a pretty wide platform to land on, we are going to try to access one of the sentinels here and see what it looks like up close. Let's go ahead and get the setup so we're not zapped up continuously as we're trying to do that, and then save the game. So for this example, we're going to use the northwest tower. We're going to do some flight dashing to head off towards it. Now, when we get close enough, I'm going to switch to the menu glide, well, because I find it easier to look down and try to land her where I want to land her. Now, the thing is, we cannot land on top of the orb, even if we land her directly in the center. So what we're going to do instead is land Rynn just below it, and we're going to actually change her route just a little bit because we want her to land on one of the 3 arms that will give her enough space to be able to land on top of the tower here, just below the gem. So we're going to angle it just right, drop down here, and land right here. Now that we're done saving, let's have a look at this object. The thing is, I thought originally this was going to be more like a spherical cube, or a rounded cube, if you will. And no, it's more of an irregular shape. It's not even oblong, but it does have like a long side to it. But I guess the best way to describe it is more like a giant unpolished gemstone that can shoot lasers. In fact, I think it resembles the barrier power stones in the Flesh Mage's palace if you remove the glow-in-the-dark effect and the spikes protruding out of it. More on that when we reach this place. Now, when the invisibility wears off, we see an interesting animation of it rotating around. However, when we slow it down, you'll see that it doesn't rotate around. Instead, it cycles between 2 positions. Given that you're not supposed to be up close like this in the first place, you're supposed to be on Arokh, which the camera, from that distance, you wouldn't be able to notice this. But aside from cycling between its 2 positions, it does show signs that it rocks back and forth by about just a few pixels. And when we're up this close, we can just simply target and take it out with a bow, just like any other enemy we've faced before. Now, something interesting here when trying to get out of here with the Who teleport, and that is there is a hidden object. Did you see it? Did you see the hidden object? So let's look at that again in slow motion. Now, if we want to see the object, we need to face west if we're doing the Barani version of the Who teleport. So we are then going to pause it at just the right frame here. There! What is that? Seriously, what is that? It's one of those times that I wish I could boundary break the game with the camera because I want to see unused assets like this in the game. I'm just lucky that one of the frames of the Who teleport showed us this object. It looks to be a cube with colored runes and a red cone or pyramid on one of its sides. 'Tis a mystery as to what this was used for by the developers. Any ideas? Now let's talk about these amazing Harpsicord Griffons that I only have a few theories as to how it worked, but I have no concrete idea how I did that. Because I tried to recreate what I did before, and nothing happened. And it takes a lot of time, and I don't want to devote all my time when I want to hurry up and finish this playthrough. So I'm just going to touch upon it here. I probably will look into it later on when I have a bit more time and leeway. So the thing is, I was trying to create a battle, the biggest aerial battle possible, by going into the bridal hall, going over to Grottos' lair, and luring as many enemies as I could there. And in that dogfight, I eventually got down to only a few griffins left, and then when I let out a sonic boom to clear out some of the soulless ones, it happened. It just suddenly, the sound just went kaput right there, and just completely changed into something else. Again, I have no idea as to, well, not no idea as to how it triggered, but I don't have a method to make it work. Here's what I think may have caused it. I do have, my disc has seen a lot of use and is a little scratched, but I don't really think that that's the reason why. The other reason is that the game system I'm using, the PlayStation 2, is the same one I've been using since before I started my YouTube channel. That's been like, what, 7-8 years ago? Yeah, it's the same one I've been using all these years now, and so it's probably seen some better days, and I've been experiencing a few times of some unusual crashes in the game that don't normally occur. And so I'm just a little concerned about the lifespan of my PlayStation 2 may not last any longer, and that could have caused this whole situation, because I think my PlayStation 2 used to be better, could handle a bit more, but hey, it's just getting old. The other thing that could have happened is just I simply overloaded the system. All the attacks, everything happening, all the enemies, and then just that one sonic boom was the very last sprite that just drew the last straw, and it decided to go kaput on me. It didn't crash, but instead created this weird sound display. I mean, you can encounter the same thing. I'm pretty sure some of us who played some cartridge games know what I mean, as to that sound, that it's that type of sound that you feel that the game is going to crash at any moment now. And especially those of us who've done cartridge tilting know that sound, that grating cacophony sound that just, oh gosh. But yeah, those are the only guesses I have as to how this happened. And I tried to, again, recreate the biggest battle, but it's just so time consuming to trying to get it to work, and probably really situational. Again, I'm not sure if an emulator would be able to do the same thing, because an emulator is on a computer that's more powerful than the PlayStation 2, so you may never even get to see it on an emulator. It may only be possible on the console where it has less power to be able to play the game. But that being said, that's really it. Aside from the sounds here, we have a sonic boom is affected, the Griffin's attacks are affected. It's just really surreal what this is, and I wish I could find an easy way to replicate this so that even those people who play on the emulator would also likely be able to make this happen too. On a final note here, when I attempted to load to the save I made, the game immediately crashed. Not sure if this will consistently happen if you were to try to duplicate the glitch, but on the bright side, my save was not deleted, but my poor Harpsicord Griffons were no more. Now let's talk about getting Arokh into the entrance to the Flesh Mage's Palace, which is very important to learn for speedrunning, or if you just want to get Arokh into the Flesh Mage's Palace. All you gotta do is strafe into here and orient Arokh in between the gap between the fane and the wall, and then press up and down as needed as you're strafing, and eventually you'll be able to pop Arokh in there. However, you can't actually get into the Flesh Mage's Palace at this point because the portal is not activated yet. In order to do so, you need to kill 2 of the 3 djinns that spawn here, but they won't spawn yet. We'll talk about that more once we get to that point in the game. And here's something that's not really a glitch, but a nice little secret that I didn't really learn on my own. This is something that I discovered by watching one of Introverted Owl's playthroughs as he was playtesting Rynn Flight and flew into the skull's right eye, that there's an invisibility potion there. But you don't need to use flight dashing to go get it. All you need to do is run along the ledge here to make your way to the skull's right eye. Once we get inside there, all you need to do is jump at the invisibility potion, and then you can just make your way back to where you were. Finally, we can talk about getting Arokh inside Jasaad's palace. I'm going to go over some of the history of my attempts at getting into the palace, but we will first talk about 2 of my failed attempts and the one success that I recently had that eventually led to the biggest disappointment in this game, even more so than there being no treasure on Jade's balcony. First, let's talk about having Arokh be able to clip inside the island and talk about my failed attempt at trying to get Arokh inside the palace from below. So what we're going to do here is the same method that we used in episode 63 when trying to get Arokh inside the ice caverns. However, instead of holding down X and wiggling back and forth, we're going to instead hold up triangle and wiggle back and forth. And from what we learned in episode 63, we need to have something that puts us really close between 2 objects that would cause Arokh to try to be forced inside. Now here, we're going to be utilizing, instead of a pine tree and a mountainside, we're using the island side and the root system to our left. Now you can either use this route right here or the one that's adjacent to it. Basically, it boils down just keeping Arokh in between the route and the island and strafing back and forth while holding triangle to eventually have him clip inside, though there is a risk that he'll clip right back out. Now, most of the time when you're trying to perform this, Arokh is going to be forced either forward or backwards out from the in-between the route and the island. So what you gotta do is turn Arokh sideways to fit him back in between, because his wingspan usually kind of prevents him from flying in between here, but just turn him sideways to reorient him to how you need him to be in order to be exactly roughly between the route and the island there. All in all, it's going to take some trial and error, and yes, I know I say that countless of times when performing these glitches, but it's true. And when it works, it works. And once when Arokh is start getting in here, just continue wiggling the controls back and forth while still strafing. But once when Arokh gets completely inside, free from the wall of the island, that's when you press triangle, because if you wiggle back and forth at this point, well, Arokh's gonna clip back out again. With that now behind us, let's me welcome you to the inside of the central island. And I want you to see there's one hidden item in here, well, more root system. I want you to look closely at this root. Do you notice? It's rotating. For what reason is this lone root in here has a rotating animation? Why? Why does this have a rotating animation? Developers, what were you using this for? Anyways, that aside, I want to talk about Jasaad's palace here. Now, I've tried about every spot around underneath here, and there is not a single spot that Arokh can actually clip through here. There's an invisible barrier that extends throughout the entirety underneath Jasaad's palace, so clipping through here is impossible. In fact, the only way I can clip through is from outside the palace, which is unfair. I wanted to just clip in through there, but that was just one failed attempt. Here's the next one, which is going to involve that Kuba up there. Now, getting underneath the Kuba here is a lot easier than it is trying to bypass in underneath the island. So all we gotta do is strafe in between the Kuba and the decoration spike right behind me here, and we just try to get Arokh right in between here and just strafe while holding X instead of triangle. And so while holding X and strafing and coming down this way, we'll be able to bypass into Jasaad's palace, at least on top of the ceiling, underneath the Kuba. Now, the thing is, there's not really much that we can do here, and we can't actually bypass through the ceiling, let alone land on it. So, this also turned out to be a bust for me as well. Now, to get Arokh out of here without loading to a previous save, all we gotta do is strafe to one of the sides of the palace, and we'll continue strafing and pressing X to have Arokh squeeze underneath here, to then use X and triangle to try to bounce Arokh up and down, to then leave out of here, and we're free to explore again. With the two failures out of the way, let's talk about the one success that we have. And that is having Arokh access the same gigantic crawl space of Jasaad's palace that we've had Rynn access. And the best way to do it that I've found is simply having Arokh land up here, walk over to the mural, and then when we walk over to the mural as close as we can, we are then going to press triangle and immediately press X, and then strafe to the right while holding X. If Arokh is dipping down like this, that means he's going to go into the crawl space. And you don't need to necessarily land down in order to do this. You can come at it from the air. All you're looking for is to Arokh to dip like this. If Arokh is dipping like this, then he is going to go to the inside the crawl space. You just gotta hold X and continue strafing to the right, and then at some point you can just go ahead and let go of strafing, or you can continue strafing. Either way, Arokh will slowly get in there and then he will land inside the crawl space. Once inside the crawl space, we're gonna make our way to the first invisible barrier that we're going to encounter that's right below the force field. So what we're gonna do here is utilize an original glitch that I discovered way back that I have now repurposed into something absolutely amazing. Originally, this glitch was discussed in I'm not sure what episode, but in case I forgot to mention it then, here is how it works. While Arokh is performing a landing animation, hold X and tilt the left stick in a direction of movement. Use strafe controls if you want to move sideways. While holding X and the left stick, press triangle at the exact moment he completes his landing animation. This will cause Arokh to slide a bit and repeat the landing animation. This was the only way Arokh could traverse on mountaintops when above the invisible ceiling that prevents him from walking normally. This allows us to find a good spot for Rynn to dismount, since she tends to be stubborn and not dismount when up here, while also positioning Arokh in a spot where he won't get stuck inside the mountain when Rynn dismounts. However, this application of the glitch is not all that useful, but now it has become absolutely groundbreaking that I need to give it a name, which I will call the Flap and Slide glitch, for lack of a better name, but maybe it will stick. Aside from giving Arokh a means to move across mountaintops, this allows Arokh to bypass through walls.
Arokh, come here!
In fact, I was so close to discovering this back in episode 75 part 2. However, I was blinded by an unnecessary step that complicated things, which was ascending and descending with Arokh. I thought in the process of ascending and descending while strafing, you must clip Arokh's wing into the building in order to prevent him from being pushed out. But you don't have to execute any of that. All you need to do is repeat Arokh's landing animation by pressing triangle at the moment he completes said animation, while holding X and the left stick, as well as L2 if you want to strafe left and right, instead of moving forward or backwards. But by moving in any of those directions, you will be able to clip through most walls that a phantom rolling glitch could pass through. You may encounter situations where Arokh takes off from the ground instead of immediately going into his landing animation, but you should be able to bypass anyways, as long as Arokh is still able to slide. Unlike phantom rolling, the flap and slide glitch is limited to areas that are 1. Flat, and 2. Arokh can fly. As long as those conditions are met, we can have Arokh clip through walls.
The omens are dark.
Back to where we were before, we are going to use the flap and slide glitch to clip through this first invisible barrier. The 2 aforementioned conditions are met, so we can simply repeat the sequence until Arokh is able to move a bit more freely. Once you notice this, you can cease the sequence as you have cleared the first invisible barrier. Before we clear the next one, I want to take us inside the palace for a moment by having Arokh ascend into the palace by holding triangle while pressing X repeatedly, which we learned back in episode 76, part 1. We are going to land Arokh in the center aisle of the Grand Hall. I want to note that I have gotten Arokh inside this part of the palace, but through a different method during the fight with the Pain Golem. I'll discuss more about that when we get to that point. For right now, I want to inform you that this was the farthest I have gotten since 6 years ago. I was so close to getting to the 4th gate, but couldn't clip through this invisible barrier no matter how hard I tried. The problem is that this invisible barrier is thick, and Arokh can only fly in place while inside the Grand Hall. This was immensely frustrating as the game is taunting me about the gate. Now, I didn't know about getting Arokh down inside the Crawlspace until recently, so my only hope was to clip through the invisible barrier from the Grand Hall side to the throne room side. Even if I had knowledge about the flap and slide then, it unfortunately won't work as intended because the only way up is this slope to the throne room, which isn't a flat surface. This makes it impossible to get to the 4th gate with Arokh at this point. Now, to head back down into the Crawlspace, we can move Arokh away from the center aisle towards the walls past the pillars. We will then have Arokh ascend and then hold X to descend back into the Crawlspace instead of landing inside the Grand Hall again. You may need to use strafe controls to accomplish this. Now that we are back inside the Crawlspace, let's talk about clipping Arokh past the second invisible wall that has been mocking me for the past 6 years. Repeating what we did with the first invisible wall, once when we have Arokh able to freely move, we will place him directly under the ramp and then hold triangle and press X repeatedly to have Arokh fly up into the throne room side of the Grand Hall. I know I keep saying throne room when this building is not really a palace but more like a temple. The closest thing I could find that the throne room half and the Grand Hall half of this temple is more like the Opisthodomos and Naos, respectively, in ancient Greek architecture. Of course, this level is not based on ancient Greek culture, but I will use these terms going forward when referring to Jasaad's temple, as well as not calling this place a palace, at least until I find better terms. That aside, to have Arokh land on the ramp to the Opisthodomos, we are going to hold X and tilt the left stick forward to have Rynn dismount. I find that this is the best way to keep Arokh from failing to stay on the ground. After which, we get back onto Arokh and then we can explore this temple's Opisthodomos and in turn the 4th gate. Before we talk about the 4th gate, I want to share with you the best way to have Arokh leave the Opisthodomos without loading to a previous save. Otherwise, you're going to get him stuck inside the temple, unable to land if you're not careful. Go to the back wall of the Opisthodomos and have Arokh clip through the wall. Once when Arokh is halfway through the wall, dismount with Rynn and call him to have him leave the palace. If you failed to stay inside the Opisthodomos, that's okay. You should be able to think of a couple ways to get out of the temple from here that I've already shown you in this episode. Now let's talk about the cream of the crop and the one thing I've been dreaming about doing 6 years ago. Getting Arokh to the 4th gate. We are going to maneuver Arokh to the gate, and then when we are close enough, hold triangle and press X repeatedly to have Arokh fly up and then discover nothing. Even if we force Arokh up the stairs and then have him flap and slide to get as close to the gate as possible, then fly up, we still get a whole lot of nothing. I had so many ideas, and I anticipated this outcome as one of them, but this still hurts. I thought there could have been like an unused cutscene, or see the Dragon Mother in all of her glory, or just have a way to access Serdana from Stratos. Heck, I even thought there could have been a weird glitched up Serdana, not unlike the 4th day and 0th day glitches in Majora's Mask. Instead, we just have this dream-crushing, heart-breaking reality. The only hope that I have for this is maybe during the fight with the Pain Golem, we can activate the gate. Because our surroundings change immensely, not only with the temple's destruction, but the surrounding islands, which we will explore that when we get to that point. As of right now, though, this was the biggest disappointment I have ever experienced with this game. Even more so than there being no treasure up on the balcony of Jade's Emporium. However, we did come away with the flap and slide glitch, which I can't wait to show you all why it's so groundbreaking when we return to Serdana in our next playthrough of the glitch tutorial. That's it for this episode, everyone, and we will be moving on to the bridal hall in the next. So, like, comment, subscribe, and as always, have a great life, everyone.
There's the gate.
Keep pushing on. We have to make it.
Let's do it then. It's time we finish this.
This looks
Take a look
bad.
at this.
The rune?
I guess it's broken.
The spell to unlock the gates?
Doesn't seem to be working anymore.
Damn it. I was a fool not to have sensed it.
Easy. Just calm down. It's over.
600 years.
I'm sorry.
600 years.
Arokh, are you all right? Arokh. Arokh.